The following program contains coarse language. Listener discretion is advised.
Our fight for social, economic, racial, and environmental justice.
I think the American people are going to have to say to NBC and ABC and CBS and CNN, you know what? Forget the political gossip. Talk about the real damn issues facing this country.
Hey everybody, welcome to the show, Round the Nation, right here, TYT Nation, here on YouTube, as well as on FY Nation over, if you're listening to TuneIn, if you like podcasts and stuff, we do that over there. We also do the stuff on the YouTube. So, welcome to the show, man. I've got a great show for you, okay? A lot of politics involved, as usual. Of course, Republican bullshit, Democratic bullshit. We wade through, man. So hopefully everybody's got in your waders so we can get through this. Okay. So it's gonna be a really fun show today, though. Still, even though all the bullshit that we have. Now, before I get started here, I always do this thing where I make sure to thank the people who fund the show. So today I've got my patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation, A. Williams. And we have the newest patron, Michael Cuomo. Now, Michael Cuomo is a little bit different. He is a $50 donor. He's actually given $50 to the show, which I didn't think anybody would be ever interested in doing. But he's done it. Now, Patreon has perks. So what he's actually gotten, if he's would like to actually claim that, he can get a one-on-one Google Hangout discussion with me to talk about the show or bullshit, what you like, what you don't like, what you think I can improve on. That kind of thing. Or if you just want to bullshit for a little while, that's cool too. I'm always happy to speak my mind and talk politics. So, people who are, that's what I do for you guys. You guys help keep the show independent, and I try to do a little something extra for you guys too, for your support. So, thank you for everybody who has donated. If you can't donate, like and share and spread these videos around, man. That's all I ask, because the more we get out there, the better it is. So thank you for everybody who supports the show. You guys are awesome, whether it be monetarily or whether or not you're sharing the videos and liking and stuff. That's what matters. All right. Anyway, patrons, patreon.com/TYTNation. All right, next. Now, let's see. Before I get to the rest of the stories today, I do have some geeky news, right? Because you guys know I'm a dork. I love my sci-fi. I love my fantasy. So today, of course, we have the news that one of my favorite series has turned 24 years old. That is Star Trek Deep Space Nine. I absolutely fucking love that series. It's one of my favorites. Next Generation, Deep Space Nine, love them. I love them all. Okay, so like I'm not going to discriminate, but I think Deep Space Nine is one of my favorites. So 24 years old makes me feel old because I remember watching these episodes when they were on. It's amazing. It's been around for that long, but one of the things that I love the most, obviously, Dominion War Arc, all that stuff. So, 24 years old. Wow. All right. But look, I could go on to what some of my one of my favorite episodes are, but I know you guys are probably ready for the news. So, yeah, I'll have to get to that. But I just have to say one of my favorite ones. And I know I said I wasn't going to talk about it, but I'm going to talk about it. In the Pale Moonlight. How could you not love that episode? Oh, I love it. One of my favorites, obviously, if you don't know, Captain Sisko was trying to bring the Romulans into the war. He enlisted the aid of Garrick, who was, of course, the Cardassian little shady guy, who was one of my favorite characters. Oh, it was great. And of course, being a shady character, Garrick does some pretty shady things, has somebody killed, ends up, spoiler alert, he ends up planting a bomb on the Romulan shuttle that blows it up, but it all leads to the Dominion doing it, bringing the Romulans into the war on the side of the Federation and the Klingons. It was an excellent episode. Absolutely loved it. One of my favorites. So, look, hey, and you guys are watching, post some of your favorites. Let me know what some of your favorite episodes are from Deep Space Nine. And I could definitely talk about those as well. But anyway, let's get to some stories, okay? Speaking of shady shit, I'm going to talk about the DNC. Oh, look, it's our favorite person, Donna Brazil. Here we go again, man. I got another story that shows the Democratic National Committee has literally learned nothing from their utter defeat at the hands of the Republicans. Now, The Hill is reporting that the Democratic National Committee has recently announced a new round of hires to build what they're calling a war room in order to fight against the administration of Donald Trump. Now, the problem with this is that this entire thing is being filled with Clinton staffers. Fail. Epic 100% fail. Here we go now. Oh. Oops. They're going to say that in a couple of months. You watch. Because they have not learned their lesson. Now, I'm predicting that this is going to be a monumental disaster, and I'll get to why in a few minutes. But first, let me read some of the article. Now, leading the effort as interim communications director would be a man named John Neffinger. Now, John Neffinger is a veteran Democratic strategist who will take a leave of absence from his nonprofit strategy firm, Franklin Forum. Okay, look, I don't know what role Franklin Forum took in this last election, but if they took a big role in coming up with strategy, well, they've obviously failed big time. Big league, as Trump would say.
Believe me.
So there you go. Now, beneath Neffinger will be two veterans of Clinton's campaign. Clinton's former rapid response director, Zach Petkanis, will act as senior advisor to the DNC and will run the war room. Petkanis previously handled communications for Senate Minority Leader Harry Reid. Now, again, if you were the rapid response director, I believe that you should not be in this role. Why? Because there are certain areas. Right? Take Michigan, for example. There's a big story out in Politico a few weeks ago, right after the election, where people in Michigan were looking for help from the Clinton campaign. Like, hey, we're trying to canvass here. We believe that Clinton is not doing very well here in Michigan, that Donald Trump's got the advantage, and we need more resources here in Michigan. We need resources. We need people to go out and knock on doors. We need help. The Clinton campaign said, you're on your own, dude. You don't need any help. Don't worry, we got the models all figured out, and Michigan's going to be a cakewalk for Hillary Clinton. Well, that turned out to not be the case. Now, I don't know if Petkanis, I don't know how to say his name. I don't know how big of a role he had in this. But nonetheless, anybody who's connected with that should not be anywhere near the DNC. Shouldn't be. Now, you also have former Clinton campaign spokeswoman Adrienne Watson. That will be the DNC's national press secretary. Watson also worked as communications director for Correct the Record, obviously the David Brock-controlled super PAC. Here we go. See, my opinion on this, again, anybody from David Brock's Correct the Record should not be allowed 10 feet within, even close to the DNC. Or, again, anyone from the disastrous Clinton campaign. Anybody who did any of Clinton's strategy needs to be fired. They have failed absolutely. 100% fail. And you know why? Because she lost to those swing states to Donald Trump. Donald freaking Trump. This should have been a cakewalk for her, and it wasn't, because she was a bad candidate. Now, they could sit there and they could blame Russia, and they could blame James Comey, they could blame the FBI, which now they're taking the FBI side when it comes to the whole Russian hacking thing. But they won't blame themselves. They won't look inward and take a look and say, okay, well, this is where we did fail. Yes, we had some external factors, but here's what we didn't do. We didn't message. We didn't get out there. We didn't go to those places where Donald Trump was actually resonating his messages, not the hate bullshit, but the actual, like, I'm going to bring back jobs message. They didn't go out there. They didn't do that. That's their failure, and I don't see why they're not all going out there and owning it. It is their failure. But anyway. Now, again, absolute embarrassment losing to Donald Trump. Now, there's another person. The DNC also announced on Tuesday that it promoted somebody named Tessa Simmons to digital director for the War Room. Again, I don't know a whole lot about her. Now, the article says that during the 2016 campaign, those operatives focused heavily on digging up and driving negative storylines about Donald Trump. A skill interim chairwoman Donna Brazile said will actually serve the DNC well, as it, quote, works to hold Donald Trump's feet to the fire as he forms his new government. Now, look, let me ask you this. Did that strategy work before? Digging up things about Donald Trump's past and then presenting them. Did that actually do anything? Did that work? No, it didn't. It didn't work. You know what? The problem with the DNC is, and the Clinton campaign overall, is that they didn't have a vision. They did not articulate something different. Okay? And what they ended up doing is just going after Donald Trump. They just attacked Donald Trump relentlessly. Apparently, that doesn't work very well. Okay? What you need to do is you need to have a vision. You need to give people a reason to vote for you, not just a reason to vote against the other guy. And that's what they did. That's one of the failures in this campaign. Now, I'm not great, but this guy really sucks. Turns out to not be a really good campaign slogan. But that's what they did. And also what's bad is advocating for zero change is also not a good campaign strategy. Okay? Look, you go to war in politics by not only attacking, but providing a good campaign strategy. Okay? A good vision for the future. You want to get people excited, not just jump on the other guy. Yes, there's a part of attacking, part of politics is attacking the other guy. Still, you have to have a vision. You have to articulate something for people to believe it. That's what Obama did really well, is that he campaigned like a progressive. He offered hope and change. You didn't get that from the Hillary Clinton campaign. Now, beyond that, I'm not done with this whole war room idea. Now, here's another reason that I think this is going to fail, and it's going to fail epically. Among the war room's priorities will be to champion a congressional investigation into Russia's alleged interference in the 2016 election, which many Democrats blame for Hillary Clinton's defeat. And here we go. Russia, Russia, Russia. We are on to Russia again. Why don't you take responsibility for your loss? Just take responsibility. We didn't talk to the working class enough. We didn't do enough to appeal to people whose jobs were lost. Again, they're not going to do that. They're going to go after Russia. Look, if you want to do an investigation into the alleged hacking, that's fine. If they did meddle, which is possible, okay, we'll do something about it. But again, this isn't focusing on how to defeat Trump or to how to speak to working people. What this is that they're going after anything else. And they're attacking Trump, they're attacking Russia. It's not going to work. This is a bad strategy. What you need to do is articulate a progressive vision for the future. Because that's what people actually want. Now, again, more goals for this so-called war room. They said they'll also be fighting the GOP's attempt to repeal Obamacare and looking to dig up dirt on Trump's egregious and unethical self-dealing, as well as his appointment of nominees whose extreme policies would actively undermine the missions that their respective agencies are responsible for pursuing. Now, look, we've been talking about these terrible appointments to these positions of power. Yes, they are going to undermine rights. They're going to undermine our work on climate change. They're going to undermine women's rights. All that stuff seems to be fair, okay? And yes, Donald Trump does have a record of egregious and unethical self-dealing. That's a fair attack. But again, there's a little bit of hypocrisy, as Hillary Clinton has also had a little bit of a history with using political office in order to enrich herself and her family. And look at the Clinton Foundation. And then you look at the Trump Foundation. Now, Clinton Foundation is somewhat better than the Trump Foundation, but they've still ended up using donors and, the donors would end up using these foundations as a way to get close to Hillary Clinton, and Hillary Clinton could do these people favors. That's pay to play. It happened in both. Now, Donald Trump was a little bit more transparent on how bad it was. He didn't care. He didn't put any of his own money into his foundation. No, what he ended up doing is that donors would put their money into the foundation, and then he would buy stupid shit with it. Like an autograph poster of Tim Tebow or something. Come on. But anyway. Now, the DNC's plan to comb through Trump's past for material to use against the incoming president echoes other efforts in the party. In December, the American Bridge Super PAC announced its own operation to review old footage of Trump, as well as his business dealings, charitable foundation, and personal life. Now, again, did any of that strategy work? No, it didn't. And here's my example. We literally have Trump on tape telling Billy Bush that he grabs women by the pussy. And people still voted for him. Why? Because they hate the establishment that much. And yes, I know, I realize a big chunk of his, maybe not big. Big is not fair. There is a chunk of his voters that are racist, sexist, and misogynistic. I know that. Now, on that, you were never going to get those voters, DNC. So, and look, frankly, we don't want those voters. We don't want people who are racist and sexist, obviously. But you had others that said, hey man, this is bad. But we are willing to let that go if we get actual change. Because right now, our situation is so desperate. We need someone. We need some sort of change. And if that guy's the guy that brings us change, then I guess that's what we're going to do. And look, you can look down on those people. You can get mad at them. There's been occasions where I have. Okay. But at the end of the day, there are people out there that can ignore a lot of bad stuff if they and their families are suffering with no hope and no opportunity. When you live in despair, your only concern is how to get you and your family out of that despair. So, and look, that's what Democrats, that's what a lot of liberals need to understand, okay? Look, we're never going to tolerate that racist and sexist bullshit, okay? And these people who have fallen into that, they need to get over it. But what the Democrats can do is they can start offering these people opportunity. They need to go to these places that don't have opportunity, that have been hurt by the decline of coal, and start to appeal to them. Not by, hey, we should burn more coal. No, like actually building other industries in these places to replace coal and giving these people jobs and opportunity. That's how you reach out. Bernie Sanders showed how to do it. He reached out to these people. And he's one of the biggest hawks on climate change. If he can do it, other progressives can do it. But look, on progressives, on policy, we do have the right policies. These policies work. They do lift people out of poverty, and they do make for a better country. And we need to focus on those policies. And you don't do that by building a team of people who don't fight for those policies and who just are there to make more of the same attacks against Donald Trump that we've already been doing the entire election season. You don't just repeat the same failed strategy. and hope to win. That's not going to be effective. And speaking of people who didn't fight for these policies, I'm talking about interim chair Donna Brazile. Now, look, I've never met Donna Brazile in person, but she's done some pretty shady shit, okay? For one, she shared questions from a CNN forum with the Clinton campaign. Who, she also has apparently ample evidence that Russia that Russia hacked the election, which they didn't. Now, Brazile also believed that a journalist, Jordan Sheridan, over at TYT Politics, was badgering her simply because he wouldn't swallow her lies against Russia, or her lying about Russia. Donna Brazile is somebody who was very anti-Bernie Sanders, who was very anti-progressive. She's the first person that needs to go. She does not need to be part of the DNC in any capacity. She's got to go. And anybody else who also doesn't fight for real progressive policies and priorities, they also have to go. And that's it. You've got to start cleaning house in the DNC if you want to win. And if you want to enact progressive priorities that actually do help the country, then you've got to start cleaning house. I'm about ready to give up on the Democratic Party. I've told you before, if they don't elect a more progressive DNC chair, it's done. I'm done. It's over. Time to leave the party. So we'll see. But the prospects are not looking good. However, there is the next story that might, I don't know, be a little different. We'll see. Let's get into that. Oh, it's our favorite guy, Chuck Schumer. All right. Now, unlike a lot of other Democrats, Chuck Schumer seems to actually maybe have learned the lesson from the 2016 election. Now, recently he decided to call out the party and say that, hey, after this disastrous 2016 election, we need to make some changes in the party. Now, let me go through and lay out some of the stuff that he had talked about. Now, he said that I believe Democrats must take a hard look at what we can do better. Democrats did not do enough to show American workers that we are the party that has their backs. Okay, already, that's a good message. Now, he added the party must study its election loss and make corrections and move forward. Now, that obviously goes against some of what the other Democrats have been saying. Now, Clinton's team and top Democrats, including former Minority Leader Harry Reid, have pointed at things like James Comey and his letter into the investigation of Hillary Clinton's emails. Now, Schumer said, look, Democrats, let's see. He said that while it's easy to blame outside forces, Democrats have to focus on looking forward, including doubling down on what he calls economic justice. Interesting. He said Senate Democrats will once again recommit ourselves to a set of principles that has always been at the core of the party. Now, he argued that an economic message aimed at middle-class Americans would help unite the factions of the Senate caucus, ranging from constituents of Joe Manchin to supporters of Bernie Sanders. He said, what's needed from us Democrats is a bigger, bolder, sharper-edged economic program that addresses how those struggling to stay in the middle class can stay there. He added that Democrats will offer proposals as an alternative path during the Trump era and urge Republicans to pass them in the upper chamber. He said, as the year wears on and it becomes clear that Democratic proposals are what the American people want and need, I hope many will, but we cannot delude anyone that this Congress will start tomorrow taking up priorities of the Democratic minority. Now, what's interesting is that for a long time, we already did have the alternate path. It's called the Progressive Caucus. They would always put out a budget that was incredibly progressive. That's why they're the Progressive Caucus. Okay. Now, it's funny. I bring it up because the Democrats during the Obama administration ignored that. They ignored the House Progressive Caucus. Are they going to start taking them seriously? We'll have to see. But as long as we're offering corrections, Well, I've got a few of my own. Now, number one, get money out of politics. And you might be asking, well, why do that? Hillary Clinton ended up raising a lot more money than Donald Trump, and she still lost. So it's not the money, but it actually is the money. Now, on the presidential race, money doesn't matter as much. Let's be clear about that. Because you get a lot of free advertising. I mean, Donald Trump himself got about $2 billion in free ads. So that helps a lot. So when you're getting all that free media attention, you don't have to spend very much. Now, where money does matter is that it matters in low-key Senate and House races, and even more in the state and local elections. Now, in those races, Democrats have been decimated, and third parties have been locked out because, hey, they can't raise enough money to even get noticed. You're not going to know who this person is unless they've got money, unless they've got TV ads they can spend. Now, if you get money out of politics, all of our politicians, state and local, will have state, local, and presidential. Will have to go to public financing, meaning they will now be beholden to the voters instead of their large money donors. That's an important thing, because then they'll start being more responsive to us, to the people. Now, if the Democrats right now, since we still have money in politics, and it's going to be a long time till we actually get the money out of politics, the Democrats adopted Bernie Sanders' model of not taking money from super PACs or giant donors, but instead from regular people, supporters. For example, $27 at a time. That would actually be one of the biggest, most important changes the party could make, because they could show that, hey, we're no longer, look, we tried the whole big money thing, not working. Now we're going to start working for you, cutting off all ties to big money, and we're relying on you now. That would be a huge, huge change. And look, it's not like the Democrats have anything to lose. They've already lost just about everything. Number two, finally bury Clintonism. It's dead. Neoliberals, the party's over. It's over. The American people are tired of your bullshit. They're tired of the stagnant wages, tired of the expensive healthcare premiums driven by for-profit insurance companies, tired of the tax breaks going to the very, very top, tired of the bad trade deals that give an incentive to create jobs in places like China, Mexico, and Vietnam instead of here. They're tired of putting off doing something about climate change. They're tired of that. I'm tired of career politicians listening to their donors instead of the people. It's time to throw Clintonism into the garbage bin of history and go back to being the party of FDR. This is a guy that was so popular during his time that they invented term limits for him. Number three, let's begin finally focusing not just on the middle class, but on the poor, the working poor. Safety nets right now have been absolutely shredded. Homelessness has been treated like a personal problem and not as a social issue that we can actually solve. And it's not just Republicans, by the way. It's Democratic politicians that have also ignored the issue of homelessness. You had a Democratic politician in Hawaii that took a sledgehammer and started smashing up homeless people's shopping carts where they kept their possessions. Come on, man. Look, homelessness affects a lot of people, including a large number of our veterans. Reaffirming the need for unemployment benefits is another one. Job training programs, as well as raising the minimum wage. Those are great priorities to focus on. And to an extent, Democrats have always talked about this. But what we need to do is we need to frame it better. And that gets me to number four. Stop using right-wing messaging and framing. You're letting them frame the conversation. You cannot do that. We shouldn't be having a discussion about how small government should be. What we should be doing is we should be talking about how effective it is at doing what it's supposed to do, what we want it to do as citizens. Talking about the size of government is pretty arbitrary. It doesn't actually mean anything. Small government, big government, doesn't matter. In fact, the Republicans who rail against big government the most actually tend to grow the government bigger. Look at the growth of government under the Bush administration versus the growth of government under the any other administration. Democrats should spend less time talking about size and talk about what they actually want to do and how it's going to affect you. That's how you message. And look, speaking of healthcare, okay, going back to the size of government, right? Why don't we talk about a public option in single-payer healthcare? Why don't we tout the benefits? Now, I remember back during the primary, Hillary said, we'll never ever have single payer. What Democrats need to do is that they need to go and disavow that and drop Hillary Clinton like a fucking rock. Done. Gone. The American people, turns out, they like Medicare. They like socialized healthcare. They despise insurance companies. They love Medicaid. So start talking about the benefits of single payer, the benefits of a public option. Talk about doing something about mental health, for fuck's sake. Create a vision and then tell people about it. Give examples of where it works and why, and we've got plenty. We're the only industrialized nation in the world, modern nation, that does not have a guarantee of universal health care in the entire world. We have every other country to choose from, to use as an example of how this can actually work. Why don't we do it? Why don't the Democrats do that? These are some of the things that I think the Democratic Party needs to do if they actually want to start winning and actually start doing something for the American people. Now, whether or not they're actually going to do that, that's a different question. I've said before that I think right now the Democrats are weak because they are paid to lose. But if you change that system, of the system of money in politics, or start giving to those local politicians $27 at a time, the ones that swear off big money, the ones in your local races. When you build this thing from the bottom, eventually it's going to grow to the top. And whether or not you want to create a new party or take over the Democratic Party, either one's an option. But we've got to start building it now. And the Democrats, look, if the Democrats actually want to do something, like what Chuck Schumer is saying, great. I'm all for it. If not, then we can take our money and our votes somewhere else. Okay. Now that I've went after Democrats, it's time to go after Donald Trump. Oh, you think I'm going to leave him alone? Oh, hell no. My goal here is to fight both the Trump administration and Clintonism and neoliberalism. Because all those things, you have to understand, Donald Trump is a symptom of neoliberalism, of these terrible policies of the past 30 years. Now, again, let me go and take Trump on here. Now, House Republicans are eager to repeal Obama's signature healthcare reform bill. So much so, though, of course, that they're planning to repeal it, or to have this repeal, I should say, on Donald Trump's desk by February 20th. That is not that far away, so it's pretty obvious that they are not wasting any time. In fact, the February 20th target was put forward by incoming House Budget Committee Chairman Diane Black. Now, not only are they putting forward a full repeal by the end of February, Vice President-elect Mike Pence said Trump plans on taking executive actions to start unwinding Obamacare on day one. Now, Pence told reporters, it will be an orderly transition to something better, using executive authority to ensure it's an orderly transition. We're working now on a series of executive orders that will enable that orderly transition to take place even as Congress appropriately debates alternatives to and replacements for Obamacare. Okay, replacement. Dude, you had 6 years. You couldn't come up with anything in 6 years. Here's what the replacement is. Nothing. Not a dick. They don't have a replacement. And considering how much of a debacle it was instituting the ACA, I remember that. It's likely to be the opposite of an orderly transition to get rid of it. You know what it's going to be? It's going to be a mess. It's going to be a disaster.
Believe me.
That's what it's going to be. Now, look, we've known the Republicans were definitely planning to repeal. However, what should be concerning to at least Republicans, and I'm talking to you guys, is the use of executive orders. Representative Chris Collins of Republican of New York said that the president in his first day in office is going to do some level of executive orders related to Obamacare. Now, I happen to remember that when Obama would do executive orders, the right scream, their heads explode. Oh my God, King Barry, what a dictator, you imperial president. You've got no regard for Congress or the rule of law. Dictator. Now that Trump intends on doing it, and everybody who hates executive orders seems to be okay with it, as long as it's their guy who plans on doing them. Interesting how that works. Look, what's going to happen is that this whole repeal process, it's going to be absolute chaos. Why? It's because insurers are going to drop out of the market. 20 million people will no longer have health care coverage. And look, they're right now, they're trying to figure out whether or not they're going to delay it for 2 years for everything to be gone, or 4 years for everything to be gone. What they're doing now is that they're starting the process. Now, some Republicans are disagreeing with that process. For example, you have Rand Paul saying that, no, we should repeal and replace at the exact same time. Well, okay, repeal, okay, replace with what though? What is his plan to replace? Freedom? Actually, it turns out that is his plan. He said, quote, perhaps we should try freedom. Now, he's got a four-step plan. He says, we should try freedom, the freedom to choose inexpensive insurance free of government dictates, the freedom to save unlimited amounts in a health savings account. That is, of course, assuming you actually have money to put in that health savings account. Freedom to buy insurance across state lines. Now, of course, that means all the insurance companies are going to go to one state, the one with the least regulations. Congratulations. And finally, the freedom for all individuals to join together in a voluntary associations to gain the leverage of being part of a large insurance pool. That is, of course, unless you are sick or have a pre-existing condition, then you end up going into a much, much more expensive, high-risk pool with zero subsidies. Now, what are the problems with Rand Paul's freedom care, as I want to call it? Well, the problem is it doesn't really solve any of our problems with our healthcare system. And actually, the ironic thing, freedom care would actually hurt business. Now, what business would it hurt? It would hurt the health insurance business, ironically. Now, look, you guys know me. I'm not going to shed a tear for the health insurance lobby, okay? I'm not going to shed a tear over health insurance companies losing any sort of profit. That's not me. I am, however, of course, concerned about the people that leaves behind. The people with pre-existing conditions that are now going to lose their health care. But that's okay, you say. Donald Trump, see, he plans to keep that provision in place because it's a really popular position. But see, the thing is that you can't have that without a mandate. And that's the way it works. And I know it's not popular. I don't like a mandate either. But you realize that is baked in to make the rest of the law actually work. See, without that mandate, health insurance companies, they're going to go bankrupt. Okay, if they're required to serve people who are only sick, or who are, I'm sorry, not only sick, who are sick, right? And those are the people who will only sign up because healthy people are like, I don't need insurance, fuck that. I'm not going to go and I'm not going to sign up for something that I don't want, something that I don't need. That's stupid. Well, okay, that makes sense from a fiscal point of view. But for the insurance company, well, if you're only having 6 people sign up, then you're doing more paying out than you're actually getting in. You're going to go bankrupt, and your company's not going to last very long. Now, if there's only 6 people who pays for it, nobody does. The whole result is that the entire health insurance industry will end up collapsing. And you know what? Maybe that's what needs to happen for us to actually embrace single-payer healthcare as a nation. Maybe this is a good thing overall in time. Maybe it will get so bad under freedom care that we'll actually have a change. Now, I know it's a bad way to look at things because, look, there is an estimated 10,000 people that will die a year if the Affordable Care Act is repealed, and they don't have anywhere to get insurance. Why? Because most of them won't be able to afford that care that they need. Freedom care does not cover it. Freedom care really doesn't cover anything. But again, the Republicans in Congress, don't really care. See, this whole repeal and replace idea, they love the repeal part. They don't really like the replace part, which is obvious because they don't actually have a plan to replace it. See, I doubt the Republicans in Congress are going to vote for anything comprehensive because they don't want to. They don't care about your health. They don't care if you can't afford insurance. They have their taxpayer-funded insurance paid for by you, and they're more than happy to strip yours away and call it good. Now, Representative Jim Jordan said this, quote, "Healthcare will be better and less expensive when Obamacare is repealed. I believe that." He's saying that everything will get better once the ACA is gone. There's no talk of replacement here. He's saying, look, job's done. Once you get rid of Obamacare, done. Replacement? Who cares? I don't care about a replacement. You idiots gave us the keys to the kingdom thinking that we were going to actually do something for you. Guess what? We're not. Because we don't care about you. In fact, according to GOP lawmakers that emerged from the meeting with Trump's inner circle, there were no details of a replacement that were discussed. None. In fact, Representative Walter Jones equated the gathering to, quote, a pep rally aimed at boosting enthusiasm among Republicans for the job ahead. The job of what? Killing healthcare for 20 million people? And the deaths of 10,000 people a year? I mean, I guess if you still haven't murdered your conscience yet, you might feel bad for a minute, and you might need a little bit of a pep talk. Hey, it's going to be okay. Those 10,000 people will die. But you know what? Corporations will get a tax cut. Oh, okay. Well, that's not so bad. Maybe they'll care for a minute, but then again, they'll get a giant check from their donors, and that'll make all the difference. It'll make them feel better. I hope you feel better sitting in your giant pile of money at night. And look, there are people out there, there were Trump voters out there that didn't actually think that this is what they were going to do, that they were not going to repeal the health care law. Well, look, I got news for you. They just tried to repeal it again. The first piece of legislation in the Senate today was an Obamacare repeal within a budget resolution. It passed 51-48. They're doing it. Just like we said they were going to do. Here it comes, man. Brace for impact. It gets worse from here. Freedom Care. All right. Let's go to our next story. Let's talk about some corruption. You're going to love this story. It involves a rabbit. What a weird story. Oh, and by the way, you guys that are listening, you can tweet hashtag FYI Live. By the way, I checked that. So, if you want to tweet me or tell me your thoughts, send it right there. I will check that. All right. The rabbit story. Now, one of the first things the Republicans tried to do in the new legislative session was on Monday night pass reforms to cut the Office of Congressional Ethics. Now, after the amazing backlash, Republicans ended up backpedaling majorly in their efforts in order to cut the ethics watchdog. Now, but why go after ethics? That's the question, right? That's kind of a weird thing to go after to try to cut, especially as soon as you start getting power. Well, it actually might have something to do with Republicans often getting caught breaking ethics laws. Now, I have an example for you, and it is California Representative named Duncan Hunter. Now, during an investigation of Representative Hunter's campaign expenses, the House of Office Congressional Ethics allegedly uncovered that the Republican lawmaker had used campaign funds for his own personal use. The funds in question were actually used for a very specific purpose. The investigation found that Hunter used $600 in campaign funds to cover air expenses for the family's pet rabbit. Hold on.
Oops.
A rabbit. Okay. Look, you got to be kidding me, right? $600 in airfare to fly a rabbit around. And by the way, this is from campaign funds. So essentially the donors are paying for this. Now, of course, finding this sort of explains why the Republicans hate the Office of Congressional Ethics, the OCE. According to the Associated Press, Hunter's office called this report about him using campaign funds to fly his rabbit around as, quote, government overreach. Wait, doing an investigation of you spending campaign money that you're not supposed to spend on yourself? That is government overreach. What are you taking your rabbit around to campaign functions? I mean, I guess you could, but seriously, it seems ridiculous. And besides, Hunter's probably sitting there saying, how dare they publish what I spend my campaign money on? That's supposed to be my money. They're not supposed to know what I'm doing with it. No, we are supposed to know what you're doing with it. Now, the office has in their report, this is according to Joe Casper, a spokesperson for Representative Hunter. The office has in the report $600 in campaign expenditures for in-cabin rabbit transport fees. Since travel is often done on airline miles, which is entirely permissible, the credit card connected to the account was charged several times, even when his children were flying. But again, that doesn't explain using campaign money for personal benefits, which he has apparently done, according to the same review. And for that, I point out the fact that Hunter has reimbursed his campaign about $49,000 after reviews that expenses were described as inappropriate or made in error. Those expenses included charges for groceries, fast food, and items from a trip Hunter took to Italy. Now let's let the donors pay for it. Again, how dare they? How dare they find out what I'm using my donors' money on? Because, man, use of campaign funds for personal benefits happens to be massively illegal. You're not supposed to do that. And look, that's what they found. Thanks to the OCE. The OCE actually did something. And of course, Republicans are like, let's get rid of it. First thing we got to do, get rid of ethics. Because they're going to find that we're doing shady shit. And now, still, Hunter's spokesperson, Joe Casper, continues to defend this whole thing by claiming that it was an oversight. No, it was a mistake. I mean, get a load of this ridiculous excuse. Quote, this was nothing more than oversight. In fact, it's such an obvious example of a mistake being made, but the office wanted to view it through a lens of possible intent. The same goes for many other expenditures. Many of Representative Hunter's repayments had to do with mistakes under specific circumstances, and in other cases were bona fide campaign activities connected to expenditures that the office was not aware of and did not account for. Basically, what he's saying is, I didn't make a mistake. You guys made the mistake. You looked into it, except for when I made a mistake. So, look, the question is here. Is Representative Hunter such a blithering moron that he can't tell what credit card is his and what credit card belongs to his campaign? Well, it turns out, yes, that's actually one of his excuses. According to Hunter, some of the mischarges were because the campaign card looked similar to his personal credit card. I mean, look, hey, I couldn't tell the difference. I mean, I'm so goddamn stupid and dumb that I can't tell which is which. Am I using campaign funds or am I using my own funds? I don't know. I'm going to fly my rabbit around the country. My God, man. And look, if this whole thing is true, which it seems to be, the donors to Representative Hunter deserve to be screwed for funding such a blithering idiot. A moron. Either that, or he knew and he lied about it. And look, I understand that people make mistakes, and that's one of the things he's claiming. But to make this mistake so many times, I mean, this has happened more than once. And see, you're wondering why the Republicans would go after the OCE. Because it turns out that more often than not, Republicans are the ones that are getting caught with their hands in the cookie jar. And instead of actually, I don't know, fixing their face and not doing ethically shady stuff, they want to get rid of the cops so that they can rob the place. They don't care about ethics. They want to loot government. That is their whole purpose, man. They want to loot the government, sell it off piece by piece, and steal money from their donors while they're doing it. And look, I don't care about the donors, but still, what they're doing is that they're showing you that they don't care about the rules. And you know who they're going to rob next? They're going to rob you. And this is who America voted for, by the way. And if you think that it's over, it's not. They're going to come for the watchdogs again. So don't say that we didn't warn you. Brace for impact. All these people, including Trump, are going to be into office. Brace for impact. Freaking rabbit, man. All right. Let's move on to our last story here. Let's talk about the minimum wage. Now, when you begin to talk about raising the minimum wage, a lot of people immediately get this fear, thanks to certain propaganda and talking points, that it will destroy small businesses. Now, of course, understandably, the people who are most worried are the small business owners themselves. People like Bill Phelps. Now, Phelps is the CEO of a place called Wetzel's Pretzels in California. Now, it actually has almost 100 outlets in California. It is a small business. Now, he told KQED News that when California voted to raise its minimum wage back in the middle of 2014, he was worried about the impact that it would have on his small business. Now, he told the local news station that, quote, like most business people, I was pretty concerned about it. Now, why? Well, currently California, as I said, is on track to raise their minimum wage. Now, they want to reach $15 an hour by 2022. Now, it raised the wage in both mid-2014 and January 1st for companies over 25 employees. So, companies like Wetzel's Pretzels. Now, understandably, Phelps and a lot of small business fast food CEOs have been worried that these wage increases will end up cutting into their profits. And that if they end up having to raise their prices to compensate for that, fewer people will frequent their restaurants and they'll end up losing money, they'll end up losing business. So when the wage went into effect, Phelps prepared for the worst. So, what happened with Wetzel's Pretzels? Well, it turns out sales didn't go down. Profits didn't go down. In fact, they exploded. Phelps told KQED, quote, I was shocked. I was stunned by the business. Now, fast forward to 2016, when the same thing happened again. The minimum wage ended up rising January 1st. I'm sorry, it rose earlier in 2016. There's another raise that happened January 1st. Now, after that second raise, Phelps said, quote, there was another wage increase and then boom, a bump in same-store sales across the state that held for most of the year. And now because of this, because his business ends up booming, he is now convinced that minimum wages aren't bad for the fast food industry. In fact, he says, no, these minimum wage increases are actually great for business. They're great for me. Why? Because they actually work. Now, franchise owner Mike Jacobs, who owns a franchise of Wetzel's Pretzels, actually has a similar story. He says, quote, my overall sales were something like 15% ahead of the first minimum wage bump. And now they're about 12% ahead this year. It isn't because I'm such a great manager or smart guy, but it's because the buying public has more money in their pocket. Now imagine that. When people have more money, they actually end up spending more money. They buy more things. It doesn't take a genius to figure that one out. And look, if you want to look at this on a larger scale, look at Seattle. Seattle raised their minimum wage to a living wage, and it turns out the restaurant industry is booming. Now you might be asking, yeah, but what about jobs? What about automation? Well, for jobs, there was a UC Berkeley economist named David Card that looked at the study between, or the relationship between raising the minimum wage and employment. Now, he did that by studying the minimum wage for over 2 decades. Now, in the early 90s, he published a case study that showed that increasing the minimum wage did not reduce employment, which means it didn't cause unemployment, like a lot of the doomsayers have said. Now, Card said that colleagues have long suspected that rising the minimum wage not only doesn't reduce employment, but it actually increases fast food sales in the United States. Now, however, there is one issue here, and there is not a lot of detailed sales data on this, on how much of an impact it actually has. Why? Because fast food companies don't really want to hand over that information. Now, to that, Card says, quote, "There's been a lot of speculation, but no one has figured out how to obtain the data. If the data held up to analysis and Phelps is right, Card said it could help clear up a lot of misconceptions about the minimum wage that are currently being touted as factual information. Now, right now, for example, people think that raising the minimum wage will be bad for small businesses and business in general, even though there isn't a lot of data to back that up. In fact, there's a lot of the opposite that is coming out. But unfortunately, Card says that a lot of these economists continue to perpetuate this idea because they're being political and not scientific. Quote, "Unfortunately, economists unfortunately have within the crowd quite a few people who are ideologically committed to the idea that any kind of price regulation is always bad." And that is, of course, unfortunately, because some of these people have either bought into that narrative and actually believe it, or they're paid by the fast food lobbyists in order to not believe it. But again, what we have is we have evidence, not so much in hard numbers, in exact percentages, but in stories like Phelps. You also have cities, again, like successes like Seattle. And of course, if you want to look at the opposite, where they don't raise their minimum wage, where they've prevented minimum wage increases, you have places like, for example, Ohio, you have Kansas. You can look at the unemployment numbers and the standards of living for people living in those areas and compare them to what's going on in California and Seattle. And when you look at those, you actually see a big difference. You realize that higher wages, more money in people's pockets, actually ends up leading to a better economy overall and a more happy and productive workforce. Now, on the issue of automation, look, there are a lot of people that are rightly worried that there's going to be more automation, and I understand that. And I do think personally that automation is going to happen whether or not we raise the minimum wage. So it might happen a little bit faster. So what do we do when that happens? Well, I think the future is a UBI, Universal Basic Income. But that's not going to be there for a while. And what we have is we've got two different choices here. Either we go the dystopian route, where automation has taken all the jobs and there's a permanent, incredibly poor underclass. Or you have a UBI, where people can now get trained to do other jobs that have since been automated and actually create new businesses and new things. Those are the directions that we have to go. But as far as this goes, for right now, let's raise the minimum wage. So until that automation happens, let's make sure that everybody can actually have a decent standard of living and make a living wage. All right. That's it. I want to thank everybody for listening to the show. I am out of stories and I am out of time. So again, I want to thank everybody for going around the nation with me today. We'll be back tomorrow starting 5 p.m. Eastern, 5 to 6 p.m. right here, youtube.com/TYTNation. Make sure to like and share this video if you enjoyed the show. And of course, if you really enjoyed the show and want to support truly independent, non-corporate media, you can go to patreon.com/TYTNation and support the show there. I am signing off. Thank you, TYT Nation. And remember, change starts with you. Good night, everybody. Russia. Nice.